There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes silence speaks louder than words. When a woman ignores you, it's not just about attention, it's about self-respect. And if you want to be a high-value man, you must learn to teach her through action, not anger, the price of ignoring you. When a woman begins to ignore you, the first and most powerful move you can make is to withdraw your attention. This might sound simple on the surface, but the impact of this decision runs deep. You have to understand something very clearly. Attention is a currency, and in today's world, it's one of the most valuable currencies a man has. Whether you're giving her your time, energy, affection, or simply your presence, all of it sends a message: I value you enough to invest in you. But what happens when she no longer reciprocates that energy? What happens when she pulls back, stops texting, stops initiating, stops caring whether you're there or not? That's when you need to recognize that your attention is being taken for granted. Most men, when faced with being ignored, do the exact opposite of what they should. They start trying harder, they chase, they send more messages. They try to fix the situation, but in doing so, they only lower their value further. Because now, their attention is not only being ignored, it's being given away freely without appreciation. That's a dangerous place to be. Women are highly intuitive. They sense when a man's attention is rooted in neediness rather than strength, and once she senses that, the respect begins to fade. Withdrawing your attention is not about manipulation or playing games. It's about self-respect. It's about saying, if you don't value what I bring, I won't force it on you. This doesn't mean you have to be rude or cold. It simply means you remove your emotional and mental investment from someone who is no longer earning it. And make no mistake, attention must be earned. Just as you work to provide, protect, and build yourself up as a man, the people in your life must meet a standard to stay in your circle. When you pull your attention away, something interesting happens. She begins to feel the difference. The little things you used to do, the good morning texts, the consistent check-ins, the compliments, the emotional presence, they vanish. And in that silence, a mirror is held up to her. She begins to wonder why the energy shifted. She questions if she made a mistake, because women by nature are drawn to consistency, but they are awakened by absence. The lack of attention forces her to realize how much space you actually occupied in her world. This is where you regain your power, not by arguing, not by proving your worth through desperate actions, but by simply removing what she once took for granted. Suddenly, your attention becomes valuable again. It's not easily accessible, it's not automatic, it's not something she can expect while putting in zero effort. This creates a shift in the dynamic. You're no longer the one seeking validation, you become the standard. And here's the deeper truth. The man who controls his attention controls his relationships. When you master the art of withdrawing attention from places where it's not appreciated, you begin to attract people and situations that actually value you. Your presence becomes a privilege, not a convenience. You're no longer chasing, you're choosing, and that is what separates the high-value man from the average one. He understands that attention is power, and he gives it only where it's earned. Going silent is one of the most powerful moves a man can make when a woman starts to ignore him. It is not about being passive, aggressive, or trying to provoke a reaction. It's about shifting the energy, reclaiming your dignity, and creating a space where your absence does the speaking for you. Silence is not weakness. In fact, in a world full of noise, distractions, and constant digital connection, silence has become rare, and anything rare becomes valuable. When you stop speaking, stop chasing, Stop trying to explain yourself or win her over. You shift the balance of power. You stop being predictable. You stop being available on demand. And that change creates emotional tension. It forces her to feel the vacuum you leave behind. When you go silent, it's not just about cutting off communication, it's about cutting off the supply of emotional comfort and validation she was used to receiving from you. It's about creating distance, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Most men underestimate how loud silence can be. When a man who used to care suddenly stops texting, calling, or engaging, a woman begins to wonder. She starts to feel something is missing, and that something is you. But this only works if your silence is authentic, rooted in self-respect, not in a manipulative tactic. If you're secretly hoping she'll notice and come running back, then your silence becomes a performance, not a position of power. But if your silence is genuine, if it's driven by the truth that you refuse to waste your energy on someone who doesn't reciprocate, then it becomes magnetic. It's no longer silence, it's strength. You see, a woman can ignore your words, dodge your messages, or pretend not to care about what you're saying. But she cannot ignore the energy shift when you suddenly go quiet. That shift is undeniable. It creates a break in the rhythm she's gotten used to. It makes her question what changed. She might not say it out loud. She might pretend she doesn't care. But internally, she starts to replay everything, the conversations, the dynamic, the last thing you said. Your silence becomes a mirror. It forces her to look at her own behavior. And that self-reflection is something words could never create. You could write her 1,000 texts explaining how you feel, but none of them will impact her as deeply as the day you stop sending them. Women often test boundaries, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously. When they sense that you're always there no matter how they treat you, their respect for you begins to slip. But when you go silent, you communicate one very clear message without ever saying a word. I will not fight to be seen. I will not beg to be heard. I will not compete for attention. That kind of silence creates gravity. It pulls her in, not through pressure, but through presence, or rather, the lack of it. She begins to miss the version of you she ignored. And more importantly, she realizes she no longer has access to you. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding your value. You're not being rude or cold. You're simply choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-worth over desperation. You're saying, if you don't value my presence, you'll have to live with my absence. That's a powerful stance. One that very few men have the discipline to maintain, but those who do, they command respect. They don't chase, they don't argue, they don't explain. They let their silence be the answer, and in that silence they allow the other person to either step up or step aside. Either way, the man who chooses silence chooses control. Not over the other person, but over himself. And in the end, that's the only control that truly matters. Leveling up is not just a strategy to cope when she ignores you, it is a complete redirection of your life force. It is the conscious decision to stop pouring energy into someone who doesn't value you and instead invest that same energy into yourself. And this transformation, when done right, changes everything. The moment she begins to ignore you, there is often a temptation to win her back, to do more, to show her why she should care again. But this is the wrong mindset. The right mindset is this: use her silence as fuel. Let it ignite something inside you that drives you to evolve. The greatest response you can give to someone who overlooks you is not anger. It's not revenge, it's growth. Growth is undeniable. It can't be ignored. When a woman starts to fade out or treat you like an option, she expects you to remain stagnant. She expects you to wait, to overthink, to wallow in confusion or sadness. But when she turns around weeks or months later and sees a man who has sharpened his mind, improved his body, expanded his income, deepened his focus, that's when the regret begins to set in. Because now she sees that your value never left. She just stopped paying attention to it. And in that time, you didn't beg for her validation, you built yourself into someone who doesn't need it. Leveling up is not about showing off. It's about becoming so focused on your mission that everything else becomes secondary. It's waking up early and attacking the day with purpose. It's going to the gym, not for her attention, but for your discipline. It's learning new skills, mastering your craft, stacking wins day by day. It's cutting out distractions and elevating the standards you hold for yourself. Every time you improve your life, you're not just doing it for the sake of being busy, you're creating undeniable evidence that you are the prize. That you are a man on the rise, with or without her in your life. And here's the truth, when a man is in motion, he becomes magnetic. Women are deeply attracted to purpose, to ambition, to momentum. When you're stagnant and emotionally dependent, they sense it and drift away. But when you're moving forward, when you're leveling up, they feel that energy. Even if they don't say it, they watch, they notice. They compare the man you were with the man you're becoming, and in that contrast, they start to realize what they lost access to. But again, that's not the point. The point is that you didn't wait for her to come back. You didn't shrink. You expanded, you rose, you evolved, and that decision to level up in silence becomes your greatest act of self-respect. This is how you teach her and the world that your life doesn't pause for anyone. You make it clear, not through your words but through your actions, that your time is valuable, your energy is focused, and your future is bright. You're no longer checking her stories, wondering why she's distant, or waiting for her to notice you again. You're too busy building something she will one day wish she never walked away from. And whether or not she returns, you've already won. Because the man who levels up is no longer controlled by who left or who stayed. He is defined by the path he's paving for himself, a path that only the deserving will be invited to walk beside. Being unavailable after you've been ignored is not about playing hard to get. It's about redefining your value in her eyes. You see, availability is one of the most overlooked aspects of attraction and respect. When you're always there, always responding instantly, always saying yes, always making time for her even when she ignores you or gives you breadcrumbs, you become predictable. And in the realm of attraction, predictability often breeds boredom and complacency. The harsh truth is, people rarely appreciate what is always within reach. They value what they must earn, what they have to work for, what they could lose. So when a woman starts to take your presence for granted, the most powerful message you can send is to become scarce. Not rude, not disrespectful, just unavailable physically, emotionally, mentally. This means you no longer rearrange your schedule to talk to someone who didn't even bother replying when you reached out. It means you don't instantly jump at the chance to talk the moment she decides to grace your phone with a message. It means you stop being the man who is always on stand. By the emotional support system she can fall back on when her attention elsewhere fails. That version of you no longer exists. The new version has things to do, goals to hit, a life to build. He doesn't linger in the shadows waiting for a woman to remember his worth. He's moving forward, and his time has become selective. It has become a privilege, not a guarantee. When you create distance, When you stop showing up so easily, she begins to feel the shift, and that shift triggers curiosity. She may start to wonder why you're no longer available, why you don't reply as fast, why your energy feels distant. That curiosity leads to reflection, and that reflection leads to reconsideration. Because now she realizes something very important. Your presence was never owed, it was given. And now that it's gone, she begins to understand that it came with value, with weight, with importance. Your unavailability creates a sense of consequence. It sends a message that her ignoring you came at a cost, not because you're punishing her, but because you're protecting yourself. You're not being petty. You're preserving your dignity. Being unavailable also forces her to pursue if she truly cares. When a woman is genuinely interested, she'll notice the change and try to reconnect. And in that moment, you'll see her level of investment. But here's where most men go wrong. They get one sign of interest and go right back to being overly available. That ruins everything. You have to hold the line. If she wants your time again, she must meet your new standard. She must show consistency, effort, and respect, because you're no longer entertaining half-hearted interest. You're no longer handing out access to your mind and emotions like it's free. You've upgraded, and the price of admission has gone up. The truth is, women test boundaries. They test your level of self-respect by seeing how far they can pull away before you chase. When you stay still, when you remain composed and unavailable, you communicate a level of strength that most men never reach. And that strength is what builds respect. Respect always precedes love. Without respect, love fades. But when you are unavailable not as a game, but as a reflection of your priorities, you force her to look at you differently. You're no longer the guy who's always there, waiting. You become the man she now has to earn time with. That changes everything. It also gives you space to evaluate her, rather than just reacting to her. When you create distance, you gain perspective. You begin to see whether her re-engagement is genuine or simply based on curiosity or control. You stop being emotionally entangled, and you start becoming strategic with who you give your presence to. That's the essence of being high value. You're not punishing her with your unavailability, you're rewarding yourself with peace, clarity, and control. She either rises to meet your new standard, or she gets left behind. And the beautiful thing is, you're good either way, because the man who makes himself unavailable to those who ignored him is the man who finally realized that not everyone deserves access to him. Redirecting your energy is one of the most transformative decisions you can make when a woman begins to ignore you. It's the moment you stop obsessing over her silence and start focusing on the areas of your life that are within your control. When someone begins to fade away, the natural emotional response is to fixate, to overthink, to try to figure out what went wrong, what changed, what you could do differently. That emotional energy becomes a mental loop, constantly replaying conversations, analyzing body language, trying to decode texts or the absence of them. But here's the truth. All that energy is being wasted. It's being poured into a situation where you're not being valued, not being prioritized, and certainly not being appreciated. That energy could be used elsewhere to improve your mind, sharpen your skills, build your future, and invest in people who actually want you around. Energy is a limited resource. You only have so much of it each day. If you spend it chasing validation from someone who's ignoring you, you'll drain yourself emotionally and accomplish nothing. But if you redirect that same energy toward your goals, your health, your purpose, and your passion, you become unstoppable. This shift isn't about distraction. It's about transformation. You're not avoiding the pain of being ignored. You're alchemizing it. You're taking what was meant to weaken you and turning it into fuel. You hit the gym harder. You dive deeper into your craft. You read more. You learn. You build. And slowly, day by day, you rise not for her, but for you. The man who redirects his energy becomes dangerous not in a destructive way, but in a powerful one. He becomes focused. He starts to glow differently. There's a calmness in his demeanor because he's no longer chasing chaos. There's a fire in his eyes because he's locked in on something bigger than any relationship. And that energy shift is undeniable. People around you start to notice. Opportunities begin to show up. You attract new people who see your value without you having to prove it. Because when you stop giving your energy to the wrong person, you create room for the right ones to find you. More importantly, you start to feel better about yourself. Your self-worth is no longer attached to whether or not she replies. Your mood isn't dictated by a text notification. Your confidence isn't based on her attention. It's built on your progress. Every hour you put into yourself is a statement. I am worth more than being ignored. I am worth the investment. That mindset is rare. Most men crumble when they're ghosted or sidelined, but the man who chooses to redirect his energy, he thrives, because he understands that life isn't about convincing someone to choose him. It's about becoming the man who's already chosen himself. This is where you regain your sense of control. You're not powerless. You're not stuck. You're just misdirected, and now you're fixing that. You stop checking her socials. You stop asking mutual friends about her. You stop waiting, and instead you start moving. Every time you feel the urge to reach out, you redirect that emotion into a workout, a business plan, a creative project, or a moment of quiet self-reflection. That's how you win, quietly, patiently, consistently, and without needing her to validate any part of your journey. And if she ever comes back, if she ever tries to reconnect, she'll be facing a man she no longer recognizes. A man who's grown beyond the version of himself that tolerated being ignored. A man whose energy is now sacred, reserved only for those who bring peace, respect, and mutual effort. That kind of man doesn't chase. He chooses, and he chooses wisely, because he understands that where he places his energy determines what kind of life he builds, and he refuses to build a life around someone who couldn't even acknowledge his presence when it mattered. Letting her feel your absence is one of the most profound lessons you can offer when she has chosen to ignore your presence. Most people don't realize what they have until it's gone. And when it comes to relationships, this truth becomes even more powerful. When you are constantly available, constantly checking in, constantly trying to fix things, your presence becomes background noise, something she's gotten used to, something she expects, something she no longer pays attention to. But when you disappear from her life, when your presence is no longer there to fill the emotional void, a space opens up. And in that space, she begins to feel something she didn't expect, the weight of your absence. Your absence is not about playing games or getting revenge, it's about restoring balance. It's about teaching her through action, not words. You can't argue someone into respecting you. You can't text someone into loving you. But you can disappear long enough for them to realize what they've taken for granted. When you stop showing up, stop initiating conversations, stop offering emotional support, your silence becomes louder than any confrontation. It echoes in her mind, it lingers, It forces her to compare how life felt when you were around and how it feels now that you're gone. And if your presence carried real value, that absence will hit hard. Not immediately, maybe not in a week or two, but eventually, because genuine energy leaves a footprint. And once that energy is no longer there to comfort, entertain, or connect, its loss is undeniable. Letting her feel your absence also means withdrawing not just your communication, but your emotional investment. It's pulling back your energy from every area, no more checking in, no more small talk, no more reacting to her subtle signals. You become a ghost in her reality, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that staying where you're not valued is self-betrayal. Your absence becomes a boundary, a line she crossed when she chose to ignore you, and now she must live with the distance it created. This is where emotional discipline is required, because part of you may still want to be there, still care, still hope. But strength is not about having no feelings, it's about choosing to honor yourself even when you do. During your absence, something powerful begins to shift. She begins to wonder what you're doing. She might check your social media. She might ask mutual friends. Or she might sit in silence pretending not to care, but inside curiosity is growing. Because she remembers how much attention you used to give her. She remembers how consistent you were, how present you were. And now that it's gone, she feels the contrast. That contrast is everything. It's what makes her question her decision. It's what makes her replay the moments she took lightly. And maybe, just maybe, it makes her realize that not everyone is going to wait around forever. Letting someone feel your absence is also an invitation not for them to chase you, but for them to reflect. And the truth is, if she truly values you, your absence will speak louder than any words could. If she doesn't, then the silence will remain, and that's your answer. Either way, your absence filters out what is real and what is temporary. You no longer have to guess how she feels. Her reaction, or lack thereof, will reveal everything. That's the beauty of distance. It clarifies, it simplifies, it brings the truth to the surface, and in that truth you find freedom. This process also allows you to reclaim your sense of self. When you are no longer caught in the emotional tug-of-war, you begin to see clearly. You remember who you are, you remember what you bring to the table, and most importantly, you begin to realize that your value doesn't decrease just because someone couldn't see it in the moment. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are here to stand firm in it and let time, space, and absence do what your words never could. By letting her feel your absence, you send a message that resonates at a deeper level than anything you could have said. It's the message that says, I'm no longer available for those who can't appreciate me. It's the message that says, you don't get to ignore me and still enjoy the benefits of my presence. It's the message that draws a line in the sand, not with bitterness, but with self-respect. And it's that kind of message, delivered through consistent absence and emotional detachment, that shifts everything. Because eventually she will either feel the void and return with real intention, or she will fade entirely, and either way, you will know that you made the right choice. You didn't react emotionally, you didn't beg, you simply stepped away and let your absence speak the truth. In the end, the greatest lesson you can ever teach someone who ignored you is that your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. You don't do it through anger or begging or emotional outbursts. You do it through silence, self-respect, growth, and unwavering focus on your path. When you shift your energy inward and evolve beyond the version of yourself that tolerated being overlooked, you become untouchable. Whether she regrets losing you or not becomes irrelevant, because now You've stepped into a version of yourself that no longer waits for someone to see your worth. You live it, you own it, and you protect it. And from that place of power, peace, and purpose, you never chase what chose to walk away. You simply rise and let the consequences of your absence teach the lesson your words never could.